You seem to be that kind of type of person like me, they're always quick on the go, shooting away with the things, wasn't that what happened with your first book, with those typos? Oh my God, tell us.
Yeah.
I'm Alexandra Kreis, and you're listening to Outer Travel in a Journey. In my own search for self-understanding, I have met people from all walks of life. I bring to you a taste of these encounters.
Hey, welcome to Outer Travel in a Journey. My name is Alexandra, and today on my show I have Chelan Harkin. Hey, you. Good
Hi,
to have you.
Alexandra. Thank you. So good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. You seem to be that kind of type of person like me. They're always quick on the go, shooting away with the things. Wasn't that what happened with your first book? With those typos. Oh my God, tell us.
Yes. So I'll reveal that. Yeah, I have such an expressive kind of spontaneity, perhaps, and excitement about just sharing things that with my first book, Susceptible to Light, when I put it out, I sent it out to the world before getting a copy back for myself. And when I got my own copy back 3 weeks later, it had over 50 pretty glaring typos in it. And which was a real kind of I just needed to. A lot of my poetry is about embracing the mess of ourselves and
Yes.
and loving that. And so that I got a taste of my own medicine there.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, as we know, you probably want to have the hard facts about my show guest today. So here we are. Chelan is 33 years old, and she is living in the Pacific Northwest with her husband and 2 kids. So Noah was responsible for all those typos. Wink, wink. No, Noah, we take it back. Don't be so hard on yourself. And Chelan, she has self-published 2 beautiful poetic books, and one is called Susceptible to Light. Susceptible. No, I did that a million times and now I don't get it right.
It's a hard word. Susceptible.
Yes. Susceptible. Yes.
There we go.
Yes. And Let Us Dance. And so, what drew me to me, it was the poem on Facebook, and that we finally have a female roomie amongst us.
Oh, those words, Alexandra. Those are good words to hear.
Yes. So, and it's so, that's why I feel so honored to have you. I'm all for, like, women need to be heard. We have such a hard time to get our voices through, right?
Yes, absolutely. And interestingly, like, before I published this book, I really had a mountain of limiting assumptions about and fears about how it might be received.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my assumptions was that poetry by a male voice would be more respected. And I considered taking on a male pen name, but I'm so glad I did not do that.
And what would have been that name? What would have
That's
you
a good
chosen?
I wish I had it probably would have been, I don't know, really, I don't know what it would have been. It probably would have been a kind of out there name. Who knows?
But Chelan, where does that name come from? It's not quite common, at least not here in Europe. So.
Yeah. No, it's an unusual name everywhere. It's a lake in Washington State.
Oh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. It means deep water.
Well, there you go. And deep you have put us with your books. I mean, really into the depth of our own mess, as you said earlier. And so well written. So you call yourself an ecstatic, mystical poet. And how did you stumble across that?
What a good question. Well, so I took a poetry class in high school that introduced me to my love for poetry. But my relationship with myself and writing was at that time, very tense and tight and contracted. And I cared a whole lot about, the approval of others. And I was very much looking at good poets in the outer world who had been successful and trying to kind of mold my voice to look like theirs. So it wasn't genuine. I hadn't opened to that. And then a few years later, in my early 20s, I was in just a very, very acute time of just inner despair and turmoil. And the basis of that was that I felt like I had no access to any real authentic part of myself and no channel for expression of that. And I decided, I'm surprised actually that I had even the wherewithal to do this in such a troubled place, but I decided to create an experiment for myself in which I gave myself permission to write what I called a bad poem every day for 30 days.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And on the second day of that experiment, I showed up at the computer lab at my college, and this poem just barreled through me in this completely different way than anything it ever. It was a completely different paradigm of experience with poetry coming through, and it came through as fast as I could write it, and it didn't need any editing. And I was like, whoa, what just happened? So that was the beginning. I think just giving myself permission to step outside of what I call the paralysis of perfection.
Yes.
And these binaries that make us so limited of right, wrong, success, fail,
exactly.
All of that. So I just got out of that. This little experiment kind of nudged me out. And with that first poem that came through, it was as though a new kind of channel just had opened up in me. And so now, since then, all the poems that come through, they come through like that. So I never sit down for writing time or whatever. I just live my life, and then poems come through.
Beautiful. So it's kind of directly from the source, as we would say, in the spiritual world. It kind of comes through, and I feel that. And
cool. I'm so glad you do.
I do. I mean, when I read it, it was like bang, straight in my face. And because I've been working myself with the divine and kind of emptying out and opening up away from the sense of perfection, as you say.
Yes.
Maybe that's why it landed so well for me. But it took me so long to get there. And there's certainly sometimes the frustration around that. What do you think has made you open? Because you said, I'm going to go away from that, or were there other practices that opened you up to receiving, and being less judgmental?
What a wonderful question. So I feel like I hear that a lot from people, sometimes surprised, that I often say that one of the biggest blessings in the aftermath of my life so far is just that I came into a place of really unbearable inner pain quite young, very young. And so I had to start scrambling for a new way. And
Can you share your pain, or is that something that's not?
Happily. Well, and it's interesting because I think that the base of it is just actually just being very sensitive to. So I think all humans at the core, our essence, our spirit, you could say, really wants to live in a world that is unconditionally loving and liberated and authentic and truthful and beautiful. And then we come into this world, and in this stage of human development, we're not there yet. And so I think really at the core for me, it was just that conflict of really hungering for that kind of experience in the world and in connection with others. And I felt it just hurt more to be distant from that. And then in relationships, we learn how to really live a lie with each other and to just be in facade and these sort of roles. And I don't know, for whatever reason, all of that was just so painful for me. It was unbearable.
Really? Yeah.
It was unbearable. So I was I desperately needed to just access a place of inner truth. And so that really began for me around age 14.
Really?
Just the sort of that profoundly oppressive nature of my deepest truth not being not living in connection with that primary.
Really direct question here is like,
Mhm.
where would you have stumbled across that you can't tell your truth? Can you tell us a scenario or a way people dealt with you? What was that for you?
It's something I've been trying to write about and get really clear about, and I haven't fully found the way yet, but it's good to explore. So I think about when we open our just sort of the inner experience and what we share with others becoming more and more aligned, and I guess I think of it more as for me, my path into kind of what I would call an essential self or my inherent light or whatever has really been the path of being honest about just really mostly about the pain that I carry. And then that opens up and it kind of clears the way. And so I would say that just being more honest and open about really what's going on at an emotional level, like speaking about our struggles and and just knowing that our relationships that we'll still be loved and we'll still be worthy if we're struggling.
That is so hard for us to accept, right? I mean, because you talk about the age of 14, and the age of 14 is full of insights, while it's also full of hormonal blast of the brain.
Yes.
So as an adult, watching a 14-year-old daughter, I can also see like, oh, this is just a phase, like don't listen to it. But if I do that to her, she feels like, I'm going over what, that sense of what's running through her at that moment in time, and I'm not taking it serious. So are we talking about that kind of truth, that we take people serious in their pain and their acknowledgement, how they see the world? How do you see that?
These are this is really helpful exploration, Alexandra, for me, and just getting more clear about what I mean. I think that's just something I'm going to think about more. I'm going to think about that one.
Why not? We don't have the answers. That's not about it. Because it's so difficult. But let me say that to whoever's out there, you probably have noticed and listening. So you probably have noticed the truth, because it was sometimes just a pain in your pit of the stomach when you heard it. It's so true, it hurts, or it would be something like where you would just stop for a moment and all your racing thoughts, they just simply stop. That's how I know I'm hearing the truth often for myself, the deep truth, when somebody speaks the deep truth, it comes from a state of being in integrity with their emotions. That's what it feels like to me. And maybe that's what you were talking about a little bit. Yeah.
I think to be truthful is to be really responsible for ourselves, not to say you're an asshole. Like that's not necessarily true, like, but really what's going on? Like, where are my judgments coming from, and what caused those judgments? And then to present that with an openly and vulnerably, really, I feel like is more genuine
exactly. And because I know that, like in America, a lot of people go to therapy, and in Europe, we don't have that as frequently. And this coin phrasing of when you say that, I feel like that has become another way of hiding, right? We're not talking about that either. We're talking about being really vulnerable with that emotion that you have and not coining it when you say that, and just kind of stick with your own, whatever it is you're experiencing. Yeah.
And then Alexandra, you asked me though about just any practices that have supported me. So this poetry thing kind of cracked open in me, which was just an amazing surprise, really. And then a few months later, though, I discovered hypnotherapy and I was still deeply struggling. I had this new connection with poetry, which was helpful, but I was still very much in the dark. And I had this first session with hypnotherapy, and that was the turning point in my life. And what it did was it put my whole system, my whole being in a state of such profound safety and relaxation, that my consciousness or my sense of self was able to sort of sink down. It was like it had been caught in all of these old narratives about who I thought I should be and how I had to act and behave in the world. And it was just able to like relax. And I truly had an experience of what I call just this essential self, inherently healthy, happy, and whole, and worthy of love and acceptance unshakably. And so from then it became really easy to move through all of this, the energy and the emotions of this old kind of just all my old baggage, because I didn't identify with it anymore. So I could, so it was a real transformation process began there with,
Beautiful. I mean, I know about hypnotherapy, but maybe people out there don't know. Can you give a rough description of what you do in hypnotherapy?
Yes, absolutely. And I worked as a hypnotherapist for a decade. So so it's so the hypnotic state, it's a naturally occurring state. And so it's just sort of using that naturally it's helping people access that naturally occurring state, which is just a very beautiful, deep, secure place of relaxation to access subconscious information, which is just information that we store on a deeper level that really drives a lot of our thoughts and our actions, but that we're not really in touch with often, which is so interesting. So it helps people access what's really going on in there and really connect with just our powerful and innate healing capacity. As our body knows how to heal on its own, so too does our psyche and our nervous system know how to heal, but we need to be in the right environment for that healing to occur. So it's this profound profound in its transformational potential, and also profoundly gentle, beautiful experience. And it's changed my life. Yeah.
So is this your brick and mortar, or however you say, brick, like what you do in your day-to-day life as well? Hypnotherapy, are you offering, or? Yes.
Good question. I was for 10 years, but when I published my books, I fully stopped. Well, when it seemed that it was going to be viable financially to just write, I really completely switched gears. And so no, I'm not giving sessions at all anymore. I feel completely done with that.
Okay, let's talk about that part of your life. What I noticed in your narration here is that, with 20, you got your insights on how to access that voice as a poet or as a mystic. And then, like we're talking 13 years later. So how did you bridge that, from coming from that first perception of I can write to wanting to publish? And was your first book so successful that was the point where you skipped? So question number one, I go back, I asked too many questions.
I love it. No, you're great.
Question number one, let's go with that. So why was there such a big gap until your first publishing?
Such a good question. Yes. So after that first poem came through in the way it did, I just quickly developed quite a huge collection of poetry, and always had this fantasy of publishing my book, but it very much felt like a fantasy. And I had what I call fairy godmother syndrome, which I wanted a publisher to just discover me without me having to move through the vulnerable and ambiguous and complex process of me moving forward with that. I just wanted to be discovered and have my work kind of, spread widely and celebrated without having to do any hard work of my own. And really, my poetry was my most precious, my experience of the way it came through was really my most precious and intimate and personal and satisfying spiritual connection point in my life. And I was just very, very insecure about how other people would relate to it. And I felt really vulnerable to the opinions of others because it was just so precious to me. I wanted to protect it, really, is what I think it was. I just felt this really deep discomfort, which I now interpret as I needed to move forward in being seen and being truthful and coming out and with my poetry and all of that. And interestingly, just right at that time, a dear friend who I hadn't been in touch with for ages reconnected with me. And this person and I just have this somewhat magical, ecstatic unlocking, kind of mutually creative unlocking way with each other. And just in that connection, just it really started activating this process and activating this real desire to take this more seriously.
Oh.
So that was kind of the inception of that. And then, do you want to hear more?
And then we can maybe skip forward so it's not too long a story,
Of
you know, like,
course,
and then you kind of came across self-publishing, I suppose, right? It's one of these kind of things we notice these days. It's hard to get
Yes.
a publishing house to grab your attention. Yeah.
Yes, I had a lot of sort of judgments about self-publishing. I thought it was the lesser way, and I thought that it wouldn't reach many people, and I had all of these assumptions. And then I just decided to reach out to all the people in my life I knew who had publishing experience because I didn't know the first thing about moving forward. And one of the women was so generous, and she was an international best-selling self-published poet
Wow.
2 times over. And so she really validated that path for me of just moving forward. And that was essential to hear from somebody who had such a wonderful and successful experience. And then it was like the reins were in my hand. And then I set a goal for myself to put it out within 3 weeks. So it had been 12 years, no progress. And then in 3 weeks, I had published this book.
Were they all poems that you already written, or what was part of the publishing process for you? Was it writing new poems, or?
When I made that goal that I would publish in 3 weeks, the first thing I did was buy a copy of this. Are you familiar with Hafez?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Oh yeah. So my favorite poetry, and it has been a huge inspiration for me. So I bought one of those books because I wanted to really just copy the formatting in those books.
Yeah.
And I had this sort of strange impulse to try this experiment with prayer. And so I would go on night walks, and I just decided to chat with Hafez and ask for inspiration. And Alexandra, it was wild. Like, it was just this playful experiment. I didn't know what was going to come from it, but I had it was like this torrential flow of poetry. So in those 3 weeks, about half of the poems in this book came from those 3 weeks of my chats with Hafez, asking for spare information.
Wow. So for those who are only listening, Chelan is holding her first book, Susceptible to Light. Can you show it a little bit more into the camera so we can see it?
Oh,
it's the first edition. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, I have the other one. I have the one, Let Us Dance, because that's a big theme for me. So I'm holding this into the camera. Let Us Dance. Yeah.
Can I share one more piece about that story?
Yeah,
which is
of course.
So
yes, go ahead.
fascinating. So then the experience of inspiration from this funny prayer experiment was so notable that I thought, okay, I'm gonna take this to the next level, and I'm gonna start asking Hafez for marketing help. Why not?
Oh,
there was
wow.
a why the hell not attitude. And I just said, Hafez, just tap everyone, in the spirit world, and tap everyone in this world, and let's get this book going. So and 3 weeks into that, Alexandra, I get a message in my inbox from Daniel Ladinsky. And Daniel found my book and wrote to me and said, Chelan, this is weird. I never do this. But I found your book and I needed to reach out to you. And I was like, what the hell? And I just sent him this really unfiltered message telling him all about that. And I sent him a poem that felt particularly inspired by Hafez. And then he responded to me saying, this is so extra weird. I think Hafez nudged me in your direction. I'm a reclusive poet. I never reach out to anyone, but I feel like you and I need to co-collaborate on a book together.
Wow.
So that was just the most wild experience of my life, Alexandra. And that's when things really took off in just all kinds of incredibly unexpected ways.
That is such a wild story. If you don't believe in the mysterious world, like you should now when you listen to that. That's
Yes.
so,
Well,
yeah.
it's nuts. And I mean, I'm a self-published poet. I didn't think people even liked poetry, I had all these ideas. I had no marketing support at all, nothing. And I knew no one really in the publishing world. And so it's just been an incredible journey. Yeah.
I love it. We just talked about this, my husband and I, about the parallel universes, because sometimes I say something to him and later on the person we talked about will pick it up as if they were just sitting with us in the car. This just happened magically earlier, and he says, this is because he likes quantum physics and all that, like with the higher physics. He was saying like, this is what they call a parallel universe. We do actually, that's kind of confirming to me, we live in parallel universes, but that's a total different story, I think.
I know, but it does reveal, I mean, I have a skeptical mind actually for all of my kind of wild experiences with the kind of what you could call the mystical realms. I have a skeptical mind, and so this, I just felt like it whacked me over the head. Like there was no denying that there's something going on, and that they're just we're interconnected. And when we speak what we want, it really activates and mobilizes something. Or it really can.
Amazing. Yeah, that's what you're saying, about the truth, as soon as we step into the truth again and again and again, and we use people that we like Hafiz, and I would use somebody else who had this divine or, connection already as a human being, then it'll help us to move deeper into that. That's my own experience too. As a finish off to this conversation, would you like to read us a poem, whichever feels appropriate at this point?
I'd love to. Thank you, Alexandra. I'll read this poem that went wildly viral. And I'm so grateful for it. It came through on I was going on a little stroll around my neighborhood, and in popped this poem, and it's called The Worst Thing. The worst thing we ever did was put God in the sky out of reach, pulling the divinity from the leaf, sifting out the holy from our bones, insisting God isn't bursting dazzlement through everything we've made a hard commitment to see as ordinary, stripping the sacred from everywhere to put in a cloud man elsewhere, prying closeness from your heart. The worst thing we ever did was take the dance and the song out of prayer, made it sit up straight and cross its legs, removed it of rejoicing, wiped clean its hip sway, its questions, its ecstatic yowl, its tears. The worst thing we ever did is pretend God isn't the easiest thing in this universe, available to every soul in every breath.
Oh my God. Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Like Sharon Osbourne would sing, what if God was one of us, just a slob like us. And just like these meanings, they come through, and songs come through like that. And I really love what you've just said. It's just the whole idea. I come from a very strong yoga practice, and where it feels exactly like that. You sit upright. Cross leg, and then you will reach God. It's like, wow,
right.
Yeah. And some people do, I think, let's not be too nasty about it, but I think like some people reach through bhakti. You're preaching bhakti. This is like a term for love, like universal love. And other people reach through discipline, and they also have reached him, I think, or her.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. Yes, you're right.
Yes. So thank you so much for your time, Chelan.
Thank you so much.
That was awesome.
Total pleasure. Total pleasure.
Yeah.
So grateful.
Yeah. And for the listeners out there, I wanted to say, really go, if you admit people to your Facebook, I mean, you allowed me in, even though we didn't know each other, and you will get to know Chelan a little bit more from her expressive side, and anything you want to learn from her, I think you find a lot that you're giving a lot through Facebook. That's what I noticed.
Yes.
So
Thank you. Absolutely. I love that. That's
exciting.
what my Facebook page is for, really, is connecting through this poetic expression. And I'd love to connect with as many as possible. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Anything you want to gift us? Maybe, I mean, you gifted us a beautiful poem, but is there maybe a word of wisdom, a pearl that you want to share with the listener before we
what a
raise the
good
bar?
question. What just jumps to mind right now is to start where we are with our sharing and our gifts and our desires, and not wait to start gifting them to the world until they're perfect, or until we have, I don't know, letters behind our name, or until we, like, when we give what we love to the world just with an energy of love, that it has such benefit, and it starts to evolve that process and evolve our gift, because we start to get feedback and be in relationship with it. And so I just urge people to not wait too much, and that there's really a gift in sharing things when they're in process too, before they're just completely, all tidied up necessarily. And so I've met a lot of people along the way who have waited years and years and years to publish their book, or to share their writing, or to put their songs into the world. And I just say, begin now. Yes.
Yeah. Play creative, be creative. Yeah. Just
Yes.
do and see. And if it comes from, your own truth, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Alexandra.
Thank you. Have a beautiful afternoon or morning
Thank
for
you.
you.
Yes.
Bye-bye, everybody listening, and see you on the
Bye.
next show.